Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming back to yet another episode with someone that is probably going to be a really interesting interview. We have just been talking in the pre interview about how we basically live the same life. We're both Canadian. I don't know if anyone knew from me pronouncing roof or about that I am thoroughly Canadian. And Bobbie, our guest, is also Canadian and has actually lived in the same city as me for quite a long time. She now actually lives in out in Calgary in the prairies and running a company called thevirtualgurus.com. And it's a really interesting model that I think not many BPOs or even just VA companies are really following. So it's going to be interesting to kind of jump into this and get a little bit deeper down into how that business is run and how it really kind of came to where it is today. But I want to stop talking. Bobbie, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Liam. I'm excited.
So am I. So, thevirtualgurus.com. What does the company do in like 3 to 4 sentences, your elevator pitch?
Right. So we're a virtual assistant platform with a little bit of a twist. We provide work to underserved communities by matching them with our AI and algorithms, and we match them to businesses and entrepreneurs of all sizes.
So, what's an example of an underserved community that you might serve?
Well, we'd say right now is 92% of our talent identifies female. About 60% of those are single stay-at-home moms. Quite a large percentage are also people that are from Indigenous communities in Canada and the US. We have about 20% that have a disability. We have veterans, a couple prison workers, and landed immigrants to Canada or the US, because we are actually all over the US as well now.
So, I want to kind of touch on that, particularly for Canada and Indigenous communities. It's one of the I guess the dirty little secrets of Canada is that Indigenous communities in Canada have been historically horrifically treated throughout the entire history of the country. And I've always thought to myself, how could we get more people to be able to embrace distributed work, remote work, in order to be able to actually take advantage of fantastic labor opportunities or labor that exists in pockets all over planet Earth, but in this case up in Canada and the United States, and then actually take advantage of that relationship where that individual worker has a much better income stream, more stable income stream, more positive work environment than they would have otherwise had getting a job on premise around around their local area. Could you speak to that a little bit? Like, how did that journey start? How did you think about that as a differentiator inside of the Virtual Gurus?
Well, if I back up for a moment, the origination of Virtual Brews and where it came from, I was working in the oil and gas out in Alberta, like everybody else. And as you know, Alberta went through a major recession. The oil dropped and thousands and thousands got laid off. And so I was one of those layoffs. But being an Indigenous person myself, tattoos, maybe part of the queer community, nobody would hire me. And administration was actually my background. And nobody would hire me. I struggled. I was living on EI and I just couldn't find anything. And I'd like to say that a lot of that was because of my indigeneity, and who I am as a person. And so I started Virtual Gurus in year one, which was in 2017, just being the virtual assistant myself. And then I got like 19 or 30 clients right away. And that's when I started thinking, you know what, I can turn this into a platform. Year one, I made over 285,000 in revenue. Year two, it tripled. Year three, it quadrupled, and then year four, like we're way in the, we're pretty much up there. We're pretty much the largest virtual assistant platform in North America now. And I realized that I could do this by providing work to those that are from underserved communities. So If you think about the Indigenous community here, we've gone through a lot. Money is trauma for Indigenous folks. The number one thing is keeping Indigenous folks on their communities, keeping them in their communities so they can be a part of their own economy while still being able to work. But nobody's given them the chance and the lift up. And so what we do is we go into the communities and we train them how to be remote work from home people. And then they get to work remotely from home while, giving back to society and being a good person. And so now a lot of them work through our platform. And we actually partner with companies like TELUS, where we now go through into the areas and we provide computers and we're working on shipping containers where we can bring people and they can work in the shipping containers and actually work with our clients. And so we have large clients like MasterCard, Scotiabank, BMO, Ideal Design Thinking, just to name a few of our largest clients. And these clients are the ones that come to us because of the diversity angles. So we're able to give back and it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Well, and not only that, to me, one of the huge advantages is you have that person, just from an Indigenous perspective, that's able to stay on reserve
Mm-hmm.
and then have that money go back into the local economy. So whenever you can have like essentially a net new source of income come from outside of that local economy, it's a huge win. And the vast majority of the times, I have a lot of friends of mine that have said, "Oh, well, not a lot. I have two friends of mine that I can remember that are both tech entrepreneurs that left the reserve because they said, "Hey, you know what? I'm here to build another company. Like I'm here to build a company. I've got to go to Toronto
Yep.
or I've got to go to Ottawa
Got
or
to go somewhere.
Montreal or Vancouver." But in reality, you actually are keeping that talent in that local area, and then other people can see that and say, "Well, I'd rather be a virtual assistant or digital worker
Mm-hmm.
than, you know, um, running oil, doing an oil rig,"
Exactly.
which is probably very good money, but
It's
incredibly
good money.
dangerous and stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot that comes
Right.
with that too, right? Like, one of the things drugs and alcohol also play an issue when you go into a lot of more of the underserved communities, but just in any community really. But and that's another thing is people with addiction are people too, and so we make sure that our platform allows that. And we have an area in our platform where it's a hub, and all of our VAs are in there. All of our contractors across Canada, US are in there. And it's their own area. We have neurodiverse VAs. We've got LGBT. We've got people in wheelchairs. And they all have their own communities within our community hub. And seeing that and knowing too that we have an Indigenous area in the hub and seeing that in the conversations that happen in there is honestly the why that we do this. And it's
Mm.
actually probably the why that we're scaling. Like our largest clients come from the US because of it. It's because of that diversity angle and the equity inclusion angle. So proud of that. Obviously, you take a little bit more of a lower margin hit because you're paying fair pay and we're not offshoring. But I mean, at the same time, the impact I think, is worth it.
Going back to the DEIB discussion and argument, I think communicate this to someone who's listening to this podcast right now and say to themselves, "Hey, that's all well and good, but if I'm going to hire someone that has a disability, as an example, they're not going to perform as well as a regular worker, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to go get someone that isn't disabled, that is more capable of doing that work." How do you how do you how do you get people out of that kind of mindset in terms of the sales process? Because I think it's so important for people to be able to figure out how do you actually transition people that really want to work, but they
Hmm.
have. I just spoke to someone yesterday that was blind and is a fantastic digital worker. Uh, they're a high performing worker for a company called Canva. They're a recruiter,
Hmm.
but they
Hmm.
are they have this disability, and she was bringing me through the entire process of how that works. How do you pitch that to your clients that are coming in and thinking, "Yeah, I might want to work with virtual gurus, but I don't know. Maybe maybe this is a little bit of a stressful situation for me that I'm just not really interested in approaching."
Yeah. And there's people that would do that. Absolutely. And it's not even just that people with disabilities, but for example, we might have some folks in our system that are transitioning genders and can't find work elsewhere. Sometimes they've been matched and somebody might say to them, wait a minute, I love this person. They're a great person, but it's just not what I want. So what we've done is we've actually created the platform where we have two sides of the platform, obviously. And so the side with the community is what we call the talent is they get to self-identify should they want, but they have profiles. And so the profiles talk about everything. There's certifications that they got through our own Virtual Gurus Academy, to their skills, all their certificates, to their star rating, to their reviews from current clients, current and past clients. So it's essentially kind of like an Upwork in the back end, right? So you can go through and look at it. Where on the other side, the actual client can say what type of person they want. They can actually say, hey, you know what, I'm here for skill set over anything. Give me somebody with the best skill set. If that person happens to be in a wheelchair, they're not going to necessarily care. That said, we obviously have to care for what their beliefs are and everything too. So we actually send them they get an adoption of 4 to 5 or 6 profiles to choose from. So they can make their own decision on themselves. So this way they're not feeling like maybe they're being prejudiced. At the same time, they can choose what they think based on the profile of the person. And then this way it's not causing any animosity because on the other side, the VAs don't even know that they're being selected for that position until they want to talk to that person. So it essentially kind of helps and alleviates any of that prejudice for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, the model obviously is working. And you mentioned that you're doing some expansion to the United States, and now you are essentially one of the top, if not the top, uh, VA companies in Canada and possibly even North America.
Mhm.
Do you
Yeah.
feel that it was coupled with DEI as a unique sales approach, or is there other ways that you hit that number?
You kind of cut out there a bit, but I do think I got your question.
Shoot.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
You can just I can restate it and then we can just cut
okay.
this out. I apologize.
Okay. No worries.
So was DEI is DEI your primary kind of sales process and differentiator because you're one of the largest companies in North America, Canada at this point. how did you how did you hit that number? Is essentially what I'm trying to figure out right now. Like how did you hit that number over the last you said from 2017, you're 5 years old right now. That's pretty fantastic growth.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually did go the funding rounds. So for the first 3 years, we didn't build any technology. I just ran it on the like third-party software, and I had like maybe 30 or 40 virtual assistants. And then I started building it into more of a platform. So I went and raised a small seed round that helped me build out the platform. And so the platform now is fully two-sided with AI driven. Everything is AI in there. With that, we have a second part of the marketplace called VG on demand. So this is like fancy hand style, right? So think about you just one-off tasks. You don't need a dedicated VA, just punch it in, the task gets done and sent right back to you. It's
Mm,
active right now and scaling multi-millions on its own when we just launched it less than a year ago, less than 6 months ago, actually.
wow.
So it's doing its own thing while our dedicated side has been scaling. We've scaled over the pandemic 500% year over growth for all 3 years. And then just this year, we got classified as one of the top 100 growing companies in Canada. But what we did was we told the story of me, because let's be real, everybody loves rags to riches story, you know. And so we went out and hit the press, the media, told the story of me. All of a sudden, we went on a roadshow in the US, and all of a sudden, everybody's grabbing onto it. So I'm speaking at the Super Bowl, like in March. That's how much people are grabbing onto the DEI. So I'm like,
Wow.
okay, well, let's leverage this and let's freaking go. So now we
Right.
have boots on the ground in the US selling. In Canada, we have 55 full-time employees, and those are the employees that are operations like customer support, customer service, billing, marketing, sales. And then we have 1,100 folks working in the system almost full time. And those 1,100 are
Wow.
put into cohorts where we try to give them about 100 hours each per month. And so they get to go, 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 go. and they get to kind of go up and down based on their needs. And then we have large clients now that are massive clients that are more of a one-to-many. So, for example, MasterCard and Scotiabank are one-to-many. So they provide our service to their businesses. And so now we're growing into this whole one-to-many size. And so the US is actually eating us up, and we're loving it. We're loving it.
Yeah, obviously. And there's a lot to unpack there. Your task management platform versus your committed. Where do you see that moving in 2024? Because there are not very many VA companies that have that type of a platform built in, and it sounds like it's incredibly successful. Where do you see that do you see that being maybe even something that replaces your committed staff, or do you think that they're going to work in conjunction? Where do you see that going?
I think they're going to work in conjunction. I think what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit more of a ripple effect across the VA community by kind of corrupting and saying, you know what, you don't just need a dedicated, but if you do, we got you. That's obviously our big
Right.
one, because you can get, they're all insured. You got a little bit of a bigger model with them. You can build a team. So we have some companies who have like 40 virtual assistants in their one team. And in the back end, it's just drag and drop, and you're putting them in there and they start working in your platform. The billing's through there, everything is done through there. Whereas the on-demand side is, we've realized, and this was listening to a ton of our clients, thousands of clients, where they said, that just sometimes I just want to do an odd task. So then we thought, think about Uber, turn your meter on when you want to work, turn it off. How can we build that into the platform on demand? And so now all the people that are in there, it's 80% human, 20% AI. And the people that are in that part of the platform are actually people that are students in between classes, just grabbing 15, 20-minute tasks, and they're just grabbing them to make extra money, or single moms who have their kids and they're only napping during a certain time. So that's kind of a more of an ad hoc. That's not reoccurring revenue. The virtual guru side, like the demand side, is definitely recurring, and that's where we're scaling quite large in that area.
Okay. And then what about you becoming essentially an influencer or social media star? How does it, how has that transition been? Because that sounds like it's a big shift from being, running oil rigs in Alberta to speaking at the Super Bowl. How are you feeling in terms of that being a major source of the company's revenue? Because I can tell you from experience, not only personally, but then also other people that I know, that is a really hard job to do. And not many people really recognize, because it's like, oh, you get to speak at the Super Bowl. Yeah, well, it was also all of the preparation work that went into that, and doing 1,000 stupid podcasts with Leah Martins before you actually get to the Super Bowl, right? Like, how do you feel about that being? Is that something that you're going to continue on with? Is it something that maybe you're trying to actually divert that attention to other aspects of the business, or are you thinking to yourself, let's just keep going until I burn out, and we'll see what happens after that?
Yeah, I think it was all of that, if you think about it, leading up until just recently, when I think we've gotten a little bit more calculated in how we approach the media. But,
Right.
I'll be honest, Liam, 95% of the requests come to me. We don't reach out to anybody, typically for the podcast or anything. They're coming to me. We're starting to send out kind of media reach outs. People are seeing me online. They're hearing the story. They're hearing it because, my face is up on billboards and stuff in banks and stuff now. And so people see it through that. There was a little bit of fear of thinking, how much will the company be based around my face, maybe in the face of the business, versus people actually coming because of what we've created. And so now we're
Right.
realizing there has to be a little bit of a separation there. But I will tell you, though, that it's working for us, because we have large companies coming to us that are hearing about us in the media, that are hearing about all the awards that I'm winning. And so in retrospect, it's a good thing. But we also do have about third one coming in, offers on the table for companies in the US that want to buy us because of that. And I'm not saying that we're going to take it because we're kind of on a mission, and I feel like I'm just getting started. But I really
Sure.
want to be able to kind of leverage my own brand off to the side while leveraging the VG brand. And so I think we're starting to do that, but it's a scary thing, especially for somebody like me who's an introvert. So, you know.
Yeah, well, and also too, when you're talking about acquisition, how much of that acquisition is associated to your personal brand versus because
Exactly.
you can't you can't sell Bobbie.
Yeah.
Bobbie is not for sale, right? It's very difficult to be able to just
Mhm.
say, "Well, I'm going to work for you for the next 20 years to continue to promote this product and service this company," and it gets very difficult. So
Mhm.
it's good to hear that you're kind of dividing those two
Yep.
sources, because I think long term everyone wants a sellable asset,
Yep.
and particularly any type of a venture capitalist or an M&A company is looking for how can
Mhm.
we acquire this and it grows beyond just
Yeah.
your own personal profile. Yeah,
Yeah, and
very
I would
cool.
have to say that a lot of that will be that which differentiates us obviously from a lot of our competitors is not just the diversity angle. That's a great story, good story to tell. People feel good about it. That's awesome. I think what it really is the technology.
Mm.
I was the first Indigenous woman in Canada to close a Series A funding round last year, and that itself, I took the full it was just over 10 million, and I took the full amount and basically said, let's build hard. Got my tech team who are all Canadian. I didn't offshore one single bit of it. And we
Mm.
went and built the platform, works with AI, machine learning, got all that. And now it's just like cycling on its own. And so now we're able
Right.
to actually kind of cut down in that area and start building up further into scale. So now it's just all kind of automated. And then so it's working really well for us based on growing up to that. So I would like to think that a lot of the sales, a lot of the stuff coming now might be from my story, but also actually might be from because word of mouth is starting to spread and people are loving the platform.
So going back to that, raising a ton of money, doesn't matter whether you're Indigenous or not. $10 million Series A is a lot of money. Um, what did you do in terms of filling out your executive board? Did were you investing more in operations? What does that look like? Are you currently still the CEO of the company? Have you hired a CEO yet, or will you?
I'm the CEO. And so I recently just did a major shift in my executive team. I actually went and poached a lot of really big names. So I went and my EVP of Revenue and Growth, Jeff, had come from Xerox, Zero, and ADP and scaled their international initiatives. Whereas we now have Vicky Laszlo as our senior head of marketing, and she's actually from Twitter. Used to work in the marketing at Twitter. So we went and just did, and I built up my team because there's one thing I've learned is build a team that's way smarter than you, and then my job is gravy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I just to be the face, and
Right.
it's awesome. So our team is class act. Our CTO has built and exited multiple platforms and startups, so that's been good. And right now we're going into scale. So our 2024 theme is the tech is done, it's working, this is working. The story is out there. We're now made it to the Super Bowl. Let's go. And so now the team is just gearing up and saying let's go. And VG on demand is rocking on its own. So it this year is all about giving more work to those that need it. Really providing that virtual back office support and really driving the growth. I think we'll be exceeding a pretty good number by the end of 2024. Where I don't even know what's going to happen at that point. I think it'll be definitely the largest in North America on the VA platform side for sure.
Well, love to be able to have you back at that point. That sounds amazing. It's as particularly with dealing with hyper growth in March of 2020 with one of our companies, Time Doctor, which is time tracking for remote teams. We grew at 202% for a SaaS business. That's like off the chart, right? Particularly for an eight-figure SaaS business to grow 202%. And I remember we hired so many smart people, and we hired like a ton of smart people that were way smarter than us. But then we realized, actually, but a year and a half, 2 years later, after all of that craziness was over, and it was just crazy growth on all, pistons, uh, we realized, you know what? We actually really need to be able to trust our gut, or going back to trusting our gut, I suppose, is the best way to communicate it. So we put our gut into other people's hands, and then we took it back, and we realized that we needed to do that recorrection, which was, we actually know how to run this business. We've been doing it for over a decade, and we know what's right for us. Have you, and maybe you completely haven't had this experience, or maybe you're just hiring better than we were hiring. Have you had that type of experience in this type of hyper growth phase where you're just trying to almost essentially grab at straws, which is, you're growing so quickly, so then we need to just hire a whole bunch of people really quickly to be able to get this done?
Mhm.
And maybe you're making, not necessarily faults, but you're hiring people and then kind of outsourcing your gut, as opposed to focusing
Mhm.
on what you really know is core to the fundamentals of the company.
Yeah, I think we went through a little area, probably a little time, probably beginning of last year to the year before, where we were over hiring and hiring based on what we thought we could scale on. When, as we went further and further along, we had realized that once we perfected the technology and once we were able to really get that going, we weren't going to need to focus our scale on the people. We were needing to focus it on dealing with the internal side of the scale and keeping up with the hyper growth. So I ended up actually doing a major executive and senior leadership shift. And I ended up actually laying off certain people that I just couldn't drive forward with. And I realized we didn't need a
Mm-hmm.
chief of operating officer at that time. We needed to drive forward with people that can grow and scale and deal with the scale. And so I completely changed it. And since I did, our scale is going kind of more through the roof. Where after the pandemic, we started kind of like we were going straight up, and then we kind of started going more like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so then after the pandemic, it was like, okay, well, that's because maybe the novelty of BPO or virtual assistant services is wearing off. It really wasn't that. It was just that our competition got wider and we needed to really perfect the technology. So last year, while we still growed about 300% year over growth, we still focused on perfecting the service. Obviously, in the service industry, you're never perfect. You got to work on your churn and
Right.
your retention and your KPIs. But we ended up really perfecting the operations, and I think that's what's helped us.
Hmm. So, in terms of that, reorganization, did something go through your mind where you thought, maybe I'm wrong? Like, because it sounds to me like you paid attention to your gut, you made a gut choice, probably informed by data, but, you know, I think about those types of decisions, which are just so huge towards the trajectory of the business. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of pressure and stress on the CEO of the company to be able to make those decisions. I'm
It
my
is.
business partner is the CEO, and I'm not. I call myself the CIO, which is just kind of an interesting way of saying I do podcasts and make YouTube videos all day long, which is a bit of a joke. But the how do you did you go through that process of thinking to yourself, man, maybe this is not the right decision, or maybe I'm making a huge mistake by doing this reorg?
Absolutely, but what made me trust it was a few things, but was we actually started being able to capture a lot more of the data. And so our dashboard that we built on our own in the back end that now is capturing the data from the sides of how many hours are being utilized on packages to clients upselling and downselling to our churn to all of this. We were able to build out a data dashboard that actually served and showed me that I needed to make these decisions. I needed to bring in the people that were now able to take the growth and run with that versus take the growth and stall. There was a certain skill set level that got me to there, but I needed a different skill set of scalability and people who have scaled. Because, I mean, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I just built this to create my own job. All of the stuff that I've built, all the financials to the tech and everything is just as me learning to do
Right.
it. I even went to Harvard 2 years ago just to get a degree so I could learn how to be a leader because I had no idea. I don't even have a grade 12. You know what I mean? So it was just like, all right, I got to learn all this. And so now it's just neat to see how the dashboard is it and all the data points are actually allowing me to make better data driven decisions. I think the decisions I've had to make last year were probably the best for the company. I don't think we'd be at where we're at right now with our scale, if I
Got
didn't,
it.
which is sad to say because I love everybody that worked here. So
Absolutely.
mhm.
Another question that I have for you: who do you talk to for advice?
Well, I am part of the, I think you might know it, but the A list in Canada. It's where it's all tech startup founders in there, and I reach out to a lot of people there. In Calgary, you'd be surprised, we have a really insane tech community here. And so I have a lot of what I call them tech brothers and sisters who are CEOs of large scale ups here as well. And I'm a part of a few like kind of sisterhood style things like IWF. I just won the EY Entrepreneur Year in Toronto literally a week ago. I was there getting
Wow.
the award. And so I have a lot of people in my network that I talk to, but I have investors, I have a board of directors that I have to answer to, just the usual.
Sure.
But really trying to look for more people that have scaled this type of business, right? Because this is where it's not easy. And as you had said earlier, Liam, like this is hard stuff to scale and to really do it when you don't know and you're doing it on your own. I'm a solo founder, so it's hard for
Right.
sure. But I think that's what makes me want to keep driving it.
Yeah. Well, so what does make you want to keep driving it? You could probably could have probably not raised the 10 million, sold it for a nice multiple, and
hmm
been chilling on a beach somewhere. I don't know if you want to go to a beach. So
Yeah.
why did you not do that? And instead, you're sitting with me, on podcast. I don't know what probably that you've done this year. We're actually shooting this very close to Christmas break. So, you know, you're sick, you got a cold, it's 3 days before Christmas. Why are you doing this versus hanging out on the beach somewhere?
Well, because I set high standards for myself. When I was trying to start Virtual Gurus, and then when I was already scaling, like the first year, I was over, I think, like 500,000. I don't know even know like recurring revenue at the time, and nobody would invest in me. 170 investors said no because they didn't think that I could
Mm.
scale it, and so I'm kind of on a vengeance. Like I'm kind,
170?
yeah, said no.
170
Yeah,
for
nobody
a
would invest in me.
500,000. Wow.
Like,
All right.
and
Well,
so I was just,
I bet
yeah.
you
And
they're
so now
all
I'm,
really they're all
yeah,
probably really unhappy about that. Wow, that's crazy.
yeah. And that was
170.
in, that
So
was in
you reached out to
20,
170 investors.
yeah. I pitched more than 170 investors. I went on the pitch in New York. I even, like, man, I was everywhere trying to get funding and nobody would. Everybody thought it was a great business and the money was good, but because at the time I didn't have the platform in the back end. So finally, after two and a
Right.
half years of raising, I was able to close a small seed round. And that seed round is what actually made us bigger. And so then I was able to close that. And so honestly, I think what it is kind of I wouldn't say a vengeance, but I'm kind of like, hey, all the no's just fueled my fire, and now I want to prove them all wrong. And so now I want to build this into the biggest thing ever, and then sell it, and move on, and then live on the beach. But I think this year is
Okay.
going to be our biggest
You
year now
won't,
that
by the
everything's
way.
done. So,
It
no,
it it will never happen. So the more the more I like to call what you're currently doing right now. You are driving on haterade, which is just sort
yes,
of like everyone told you no, and every time someone told you no, it got you closer to a yes, and you
yeah,
just keep knocking on doors till you get the yes, and every time you get a no, it moves you more and more forward, whereas the vast majority of the people that go through that
same,
process have the opposite effect, where it's
yeah,
like, oh, the more
yeah,
no's I get, well, I should probably not do this anymore, this is stupid. No,
yeah,
I'm going to keep going, right? So
yeah,
that's very
yeah,
inspiring, and to get that type of energy is very rare, and I would feed off of it as long as you possibly can. Even though
yeah,
people say, and long term, haterade is not really healthy. like
No,
hire a
but
therapist to be able to offset that.
yeah.
But like really, when you look at the
Mhm.
pragmatics, haterade is so powerful to be able to
Yeah.
move your business forward, because you're no one would pitch 170 investors unless they
Yeah.
just had this discipline of mind to be able to say, I can pursue this more than anyone else can.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
very, very
And
cool.
I always tell people that the first 10, 15, 20 no's, they hurt me. I wanted to really throw the towel in. The next ones after that just made me sad, and sad for my people, for, Indigenous folks who never get that chance. And then the final no's after that, they just fueled my fire. I was like, you know what? You're not going to get me down. I'm going to prove you so wrong that you're going to regret it. And that it just made me want to go and go. And, since I did that, and since I really persevered and became really super resilient to it and wanted to do it, I say that it was because I was trying to maybe just say, oh, I wanted to get back at these people. I wanted to be like, you can't say no to me, and I'm just going to show you that I can do it. But really what it was actually inspiring my Indigenous folks more, that, you know what, like, I
Mm.
can do this, and I'm going to do it. Now we're quite a big number that we you just got a term sheet in for, that I'm like, holy crap. Like, I had $300 to my name when I started it. So to be able to go from that
Right.
to there, I'm proud of. So I don't think I'm done yet. But I also think that I'm really excited for the next 2 years for sure. Like, I think that we've got a lot on the roster that is going to scale us, and we are going to become, world renowned in the UK, Australia, and all these places. So I'm pumped for it for sure.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's incredibly
Hmm.
inspiring. And I would also say I have a lot of friends that have sold their companies. Definitely hire a therapist before you do it, because almost
Yes.
every single one of the people that have sold their companies that have
Yeah.
your type of drive and mindset get incredibly depressed like 2 weeks after
Yeah.
they sell it.
It's what I
It's
heard.
more,
I
it's like
actually,
this is your child more than anything else, right? This is something
yeah.
that you're excited about doing, and I can feel the passion
Yeah.
that you have for it. I would be very careful about selling, because
Yeah.
you just, or if you're going to sell, make sure that you just have the right system in place and support, that you know what
Yeah.
your next thing is going to be, and that transition is going to be even more exciting than what you were doing before.
Uh,
I had
appreciate that.
a friend of mine. He sold his company for hundreds of, well, it was close to $500 million,
Wow.
and he
Yeah.
was a bootstrapped founder. No, no outside money. Him and his co-founder got it all. And I saw him at an event 2.5 weeks later, and I went up to him, and I gave him a high five, and I said, "Congratulations, you've made it. This is fantastic. You know, what are you doing now?" And he was the very definition of depressed. He said, "I
Yeah.
wish I could get the company back." And it just
Yeah.
gave me such a huge shock to recognize that someone that had achieved, quote unquote, what everyone in tech talks about achieving, didn't,
Mhm.
they completely regretted it the moment after they did
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
which
No matter how much money,
is scary.
it's yeah. And one thing I am scared of that though. I am scared that because I have so much passion for this, but really what makes me go and tick every day is the amount of people that we're providing work to. And for me is I don't think I'm done yet because I'm just learning. I'll probably start another business or something, but I think right
Sure.
now my ultimate goal is to get this to a minimum of, a 400 million valuation, and I'm not far from doing that. So I think that it that was my ultimate goal, and I think that, when I achieve that, I mean, who am I kidding? I'm going to be like, wait a minute, I'm going to go to this. I'm now going to go to this, and I know that, and I think it's a good place to be. But I don't think I would last too long without doing it because I love doing this every day.
Well, why don't we make a
Mhm.
deal? When you do sell the company, please come back on the podcast, and then we can talk about it, and we can see how you
Okay.
really feel. Because that will be
Deal, we
really
go.
interesting to be able to kind of tie this podcast to the other one, and see where you're at. I've got a couple fast and quick questions for
Okay.
you, which I usually end every single interview with. Pardon me, because I have a cold too.
Mm.
What's
Yes.
the first question that I have is what counterintuitive advice would you give to other founders to hit the type of numbers that you're currently hitting, particularly in building a virtual assistant company?
I think, if I were to think right off the top of the head, one of my number one things would be is just stay true to who you are yourself. Because that's actually what I think experienced our growth was me actually, or what helped us experience the growth, but was me actually teaching my entire employees, the VAs, people that work with us, that I'm going to be who I am and I'm not going to change. And that I want everybody to be who they are in the company, no matter what. And I think living that
Mm,
story and inspiring others to live their story is what has, helped us with the growth. Some of it's come natural, some of it's come where we've had to work super hard. And I think doing that has showed so many people that it's okay to be. But if I were to look at more of the technical side of things, it would be don't grow faster than what you think you need to be. It's okay because I mean, I did try to grow too fast at one point, and there was a point where I had to kind of cycle back and say, "Well, wait a minute. Like we think we're here. We're not there. You don't need hundreds of staff. You need, this. This is what you need." And I had to pay a little bit of a lesson for that and really dial things back. And so, just kind of grow within your means.
mm. Okay, yeah, that's good counterintuitive advice. What's the biggest mistake you made in your business? And when I
It
ask you that
was,
question, I would
yeah,
love for you to tell me the one that's immediately in your head, because you have one
okay,
that probably popped up to the front of your head,
it did.
and then you think, oh, I
Yeah,
can't tell Liam that one. That's the one I'd like to know,
yeah,
please.
okay. It was when I first started Virtual Gurus 2016, 2017, 2017. I didn't think that I could actually do it. And so I hired a CEO to run it for me because I didn't think I could. I had major imposter syndrome. And
Mm,
I ended up giving away way too much of my shares. And to this day, it kicks me in the butt. But I hired somebody because I truly didn't think that I could do it. And so I ended up having to remove this person from the company. It got messy. And for me, that was probably the biggest mistake I've ever done because I would be a lot more worth it right now if I didn't do that.
right. Gut feel. It's gut feel. It goes back to
Mhm.
that gut. You've got to.
Yeah.
It's. I'm telling you, I have. I think entrepreneurs have a gut, and they do not pay attention to it anywhere near as
Hmm.
much as they should. Particularly when they think everyone else is smarter than them. They are,
Yeah.
but your
Yeah.
gut is what drives the business, not how intelligent you are.
Yeah.
Next
Yeah.
question I have. What's the biggest thing stopping you from getting to the next level in the business?
I think that's a tough one because there's a whole bunch of it. But honestly, I think what it is my own confidence on certain levels. Like I have a lot of confidence to run it. I have a lot of like I know I can. But now that we're getting into the big leagues, as I say, there's a part of me that sits back going, "Holy crap, what am I getting myself into? This is insane." And
Mm,
I'm scared for that next level. Like we got to a certain amount of revenue and then the next amount and the next is okay, I got this, I can do this. And now we're into the big leagues, we're hyperscale, and now I'm thinking, oh man, I don't know, so I think that's me being in my own head is going to be the biggest mistake. And so I am trying to get out of my own head. I'm trying to really work with my team. I'm trying to really work on the culture. I'm trying to learn things so that I can make sure that they have my best and that I'm being my best
right.
person. But I guess I'm only human too, right? But when you're a solo founder doing something like this and to this scale, it is scary. It's a scary space to be. Mm.
Yeah, you
I
don't have
think,
anybody to
yeah,
pitch to.
yeah,
That's the big thing that
yeah.
is such a good exit valve. You can just turn to your co-founder and say,
Okay.
"Can you believe what the COO told us yesterday? What a, you know,
Yeah,
what an a-hole." That type of a thing. But
yeah,
you can't do
yeah.
that. Or, "Oh, we just had a horrible situation where we just lost $11 million. How are we going to
Hmm.
dig ourselves out of that one?" Yeah, I can see that. Do you feel like and it sounds like it's a bit of a recurring process, um, this feeling that you're not good enough to be able to compete with the big boys.
Oh yeah,
Do you
yeah.
see what kind of work do you feel like you're doing? Because it could be really interesting for people to hear this. Like, have you have you done any work on that? Is there a process that or a methodology that you use to be able to get yourself out of that
Hmm.
mindset? Because I think everyone has it. Like
Yeah.
everyone thinks when you have a entrepreneurship, it's like there's this huge chip on everyone's shoulder where they secretly think they're the stupidest person in the room.
Yeah.
Like if you got 20 entrepreneurs in a room, they would all think that they're the stupidest person in the room,
Yeah.
generally,
Mm.
which is really destructive and bad for everyone's. It's like I don't want to necessarily turn this into a therapy session, but
Yeah.
how do you feel like you break that down and break that barrier down? Because that seems like, at least for you mentally, that's if you can conquer that this next year, you're going to be unstoppable.
Yeah. Lately a lot of it is just making sure I'm going back to my roots and, doing my meditation. And I did hit burnout 2 years ago, and I was over 180 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I lost
Wow.
180 pounds in this last 2 years by turning my life around and being healthy and saying, if my mind is not healthy, then my business isn't going to be healthy. And so I meditate, I read a book a week, and all these books are about scale or from some of some of the best scale up founders out there and I really just make sure that I have that mind, body balance type thing. So I exercise, but I meditate, and then I really just make sure I take vacations. I shut down at 5:30 and spend my life with my family in the evenings, and I really focus on being that person where I could always be better. I have one motto, and I'll never be perfect, but I can always try to be 1% better every day, and that's all I strive for. And now it's really just about trying to be that person, but I'm always going to have doubts, and
Mm.
sometimes I have to go back to humble beginnings and remind myself that not a lot of people get to achieve this level of success, and that I should be humble and proud of that. So that kind of brings me back and grounds me again.
I have well, he's a fellow Canadian, but he's a business coach of mine, and he was a business coach for us for 3 years, and
Wow.
he said two things, which was get 1% better every day, which is really important. It's you don't have to
Mhm.
actually change the world; you just have to get 1% better every day, and then
Yeah.
also your bank account should go up, but your belt size should go down.
Yeah.
Like those two things shouldn't be the
That's
same, right? Your
smart.
belt side needs to stay low while your bank account goes up. If those two are not happening, then you're generally not healthy and you're going to end up in burnout.
It's a good way to look
It's
at it. It's a
inevitability.
good way because, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, mm, that's
Last
right.
question I have for you. What do you think the industry needs to do differently? If you could just wave your magic wand and you can change one thing that your industry does differently, what would it be?
I think it would be to, believe that the underdogs can do it. Believe that the underdogs can do it, like the people that people typically look over. When you're walking down the street next and you see somebody on the side of the street not having a good life, like just think about what that person could do had they been given the chance. And that's just something that I think is super important as humans, and it's important because I think that virtual gurus would be 10x where it's at right now if people just gave me a chance in my early days. But I'm proud of where I'm at right now because I'm going to get there and achieve that. But it's like, and I think it's just, yeah, just give people the opportunity to show you that they can do it. And I think it's good for you. It's good for your soul, good for their soul. Yeah.
You know what? And I don't want to necessarily disagree with you, but I don't think it would be 10 times the size. I think that
Yeah.
all of these no's that you got fed your haterade and fed that passion that you have for the business,
Yeah.
which was the more people that said you couldn't do it, the more committed you were to doing it. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't know why this exists. It's really stupid when you actually think about it logically for an extended amount of time. But I see it time and time and time and again in very driven entrepreneurs. They just, yeah, everyone's telling me that this is a bad idea. I'm going to do it anyway.
I'm
fuck
gonna
it.
do it
Like, I'm
anyway.
just going to go
Yep.
do
Yeah,
it. And
exactly.
it's really powerful to be able to have that type of
Yeah.
power. But counterintuitively, if you had a really easy time at actually achieving it, you probably wouldn't have had the same commitment towards it, which I
Yeah.
know is very counterintuitive, but incredibly powerful when you use what is a negative experience to really supercharge you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I still have a lot in me because I feel like maybe that's why I still feel like I'm just getting started. Mm.
I hope you are. Uh, Other than that, it's thevirtualgurus.com. And is there anywhere else that people can kind of learn more about not only the virtual gurus, but you yourself?
Yeah, you can probably just
Any
go to
links?
bobbieracette.com.
Okay, great. Get
Yeah,
all your socials there.
bobbieracette.com.
Well, thanks a lot. Very,
All
very,
right.
very interesting conversation. And I hope to have you back on when you've sold the company for 100, let's call it 1.2 billion. That sounds like a really good number.
Okay,
And
deal.
don't laugh at that. 1.2 billion. You come back on, and we can have another therapy session, and hopefully we can dry your eyes with $100 bills.
Sounds good. All right, thanks, Liam.
All
Appreciate it.
right.